Okay, well, I clicked the button, so from now on, whatever we're saying is going
Yeah,
to
so you know that guy that we met, that we were talking. Yeah. Oh, never mind.
Now the cool thing about this is the very beginning is to me the most exciting part, because it's like you watch the counter going up, of the people that are actually watching this stuff. And then there is the chat underneath, and people start to join in, and they're like, "Hey, what's up, guys? Hey, yo,
Something.
sup?" No, it's cool. Maybe you can also put like keep an eye on the chat in case you see questions coming in, because I
Yeah.
try to do both. And I apologize if it's going to look like I'm not listening to you, but I'm keeping an eye on the chat just to see if there is some valuable input, that questions coming from somebody that I can actually ask you.
Sounds good. Well, I'm ready. Like I said, I got my vino. Don't know who's watching. I'm ready to go on
And
my Sunday evening.
now that we are doing the live, I'm not gonna drink from the bottle anymore, but I'm gonna serve myself a glass of water. It
I
makes
could drink
everything.
I think I could drink straight from the bottle.
It
That'd
makes
be a bit more
it
appropriate.
makes everything a lot more elegant, right?
That's right.
And also the bottle of water is standing right in front of the ring light, so I'm getting all these caustics in my face.
Which the 3D artists will appreciate.
Yeah. Okay, so we are about a minute and a half in. We haven't started yet. We're waiting for our friends to joining us. We have currently 5 people watching. They're probably all of your friends.
Yeah, probably. Maybe my mom, maybe my dad.
Oh,
Shout out.
actually, hi mom, I love you. Maybe you know what you wanna do. You wanna make a post saying that we're live.
Yeah, I should do that.
Yeah, take your time. Don't worry. There are 13 people watching. Guys, we haven't started yet. Go into the chat and say hi. Let's see who's watching. And
There's
also,
different time zones all over the world. Crazy.
is V watching?
She isn't. Oh, maybe she is. Actually, no, she is. It's delayed, apparently.
Yeah, of course, a couple
It's
of
not.
minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just think about it. This video is going
Marco, g'day.
from Israel all the way to Australia, and then back into the servers of like in California, and then back on our screens.
I know, right?
Not just your dad and mom. Okay, so greetings from Hungary. Okay, so people are watching. Hi.
We got a few.
Yeah, we got a few. It's not
I
bad.
think it'd be fitting for me to say g'day.
Yeah, g'day.
G'day, mate. How you going? That's
Okay,
how we do
dude,
it, man.
listen, we are about 3 minutes in. There are 20 people watching. I think this is a good way to start this live show. What do you say?
Let's do it.
Okay, so Justin, let's do a very quick introduction about yourself. Who are you?
A quick intro about myself. Who am I? My name's Justin Bourn. I am founder of Blank Canvas Studios out of Australia in Perth, down under. It's currently 8 o'clock here for those who missed out. I got my vino. I'm ready to chat. What else about me? I'm not a traditional, I guess I'm a 3D artist by heart, but I did actually engineering. I started Blank Canvas nearly 4 years ago now, which is crazy. Never worked for a 3D studio before. Pretty much ran out of the gate as a freelancer, and now we're a studio of 10 people across all of Australia with an office in Sydney, Melbourne, and Perth. So, yeah, that's a short brief of who I am. Yeah. What else do you want to know?
Okay, you're very humble. If I were in your position, I'll be like, my company, guys. You have no idea about my company. Okay, let me tell you something about my company. Okay, maybe I'm a little bit too dramatic myself when I talk about.
I think so.
No, but in a way, the reason why I wanted to have this live with you is because at the moment, one of the things that I discuss the most with the people watching my videos, watching my channel, I'm trying to kind of like slowly change the mindset of people doing archivists. My idea, and this is a very personal idea, people might not agree with this, is that in a way we should acknowledge as 3D artists the fact that with our work we bring value to people. Now, it might not be the same value as, somebody making an open heart surgery, or it might not be the same value of a lawyer, it might not be the same value as a mechanic, but it is a certain type of value that at the end of the day generates money, generates revenue for people that use our services. And I fear that the fact that people don't understand this aspect of doing our job is actually putting ourselves in a situation where we don't know how to deal with, our own expenses. We don't know how to deal with business growth. We don't understand the concept of business growth. We don't understand a lot of things that are business related and that don't allow us to reach the position, the professional position that we might be aspiring to reach. What do you want to say about this?
Oh, look, I wouldn't be in the minority that disagree with you. I agree 100%. And it was interesting. This was actually brought up in the studio not too long ago. I think when it was referenced to another industry, and our studio is kind of very big on our vision, mission, and our values. So I guess our vision at Blank Canvas is to enable people to share experiences in a positive way. And that can be through anything, and that can be through our clients, through our team members, through the community. Because what we do is I guess as an archviz, which you break it down, and it depends on who your clientele is. If you're for competition based, or for us, we're heavily on the marketing side. So what we do is we help people buy apartments or help them make a big decision in their life. Yeah, there's the investor game, but we're helping everyday people spend 500 to a million or whatever it is, a lot of big life decisions through an image that we produce. And then you've got the other aspect of that, we actually progress and help. We complement, obviously, architects and other industries. But without our imagery, you could imagine how slow progress would be throughout the world, because the average Joe can barely read a plan. Let alone look at an elevation or anything like that. So without the imagery that we produce, that would slow down progress so quickly, I believe, as well. So we do a lot more, and we help people experience spaces that do not yet exist. And I think that's pretty cool. Typically people ask me what do I do for work? And I say I make pretty pictures, which is a little bit of probably the opposite of where you're going to go, because most people just don't understand what we do.
Yeah.
And, with obviously virtuality and a few other things up on the rise, that's only going to enhance those experiences further. So I agree 100. I am on your side, and I agree 100%. And I guess as part of our studio, we acknowledge that a lot, that, we're enabling things that don't exist yet to be positively experienced by everyone. We want to, your imagery. Someone made a comment of like, we just render a small little townhouse or a little apartment, and that doesn't inspire people. And I'm like, yeah, it does. Someone looks at your renders and that gets them wanting to either do better renders or get into the industry or whatever. So there is a lot of influence there. So yeah, I am completely on your page. But I think as well, it's really great to be able to do what you love. And that's the other part of it. I think 3D artists and archviz, or 3D artists in general, whether it's archviz or Hollywood or any kind of creative space, are really generally passionate about what they do. And that can have its consequences with it, which are like when you talk the business aspect or even life aspect, you can get so engrossed in your work that everything else just falls to the wayside because you're just so passionate and love what you do, which is a phenomenal feeling. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people just go to their day job. You know, the fact that you're either getting paid to do something that you would do for free is already kind of, you're winning a lot to the majority of the world.
I'm not really that religious of a person, but I would say amen to that because now this was beautiful. You kind of reminded me. I was having like brunch a couple of hours ago with my wife, and all of a sudden, a message from Jason, which is my partner in the D2 conference, comes up, and he needed some files from me because he needs to do something that we are currently working on. And I was like, oh, I gotta go home, I gotta do this. And then I was like, but I'm having brunch, and I'm like, giving a file to Jason is still more fulfilling than having brunch, if you know what I mean. It's
Yeah,
I guess
pretty
this
bad.
is also sad in a way.
Yeah, I mean, is it right or wrong? There's been some conversations of late, and saw another article about the over amount of hours being worked in the architectural field, and 3D Archviz is very similar, and our industry is much the same, where we work probably more hours than what we should, and if you want to make a lot of money and you want an easy life, then don't get into this gig. But it can be quite fulfilling when people admire your work and compliment. That's a really awesome job. And as an artist, you're always like, it's all right. Could be
Yeah.
better. It's not bad.
It's funny what you said before about this picture doesn't inspire anyone. This kind of like conversations or like comments, I hear them all the time. And the truth is that once you have something out there, in a way or another, it will always inspire people, either for the good or for the bad. And personally, in my own vision, I try to inspire, at least I try, people in a positive way, because I know that whatever you do and whatever you put out there nowadays with the world of, the Internet of Things, you can only influence people, you always do. It's actually a little bit difficult to understand, but you might, I don't know, I see it every day, with social media. If you make a post where you say I'm happy, and you really mean it, and you write something beautiful, and you put a song, maybe you're influencing the life of somebody else that might have not felt the same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you do it with your work, you're influencing artists.
Look, I mean, I don't know whether this is going down the path that you want to go, but that's kind of the reason that I decided to grow Blank Canvas into a studio and not stay a freelancer. Was that exact reason, was to help others become. And I had this conversation actually with a good friend of mine who might still be watching just yesterday, around like these pivotal points when you got to make these decisions. And so like when I started Blank Canvas 4 years ago, I just started it because I love 3D. And this particular friend of mine is going through his own journey right now of just loving cinematography. And that's all you think about. That's all you do. You don't really have an overall vision. You don't really have any real goals other than I just love to do this full time. This is all I want to do. And that's kind of how Blank Canvas started and naturally grew, because that's all I wanted to do. It was just 3D, 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 3D. And people would, and even up until this day, people compliment, and because I don't know whether it's right or wrong, like I can't believe he can still work and do those things as well. Like on a weekend, on a Saturday night, I can still be working doing 3D. But it doesn't feel like work because I really enjoy it. And whether that's right or wrong can be debatable. But what's interesting is then when I went to go hire my first staff member, and I put the application out there, and I got over 100 people come back. And I live in Perth. Perth is one of the smaller cities in Australia. It's not that well known. So in comparison, like Sydney has around 4 million population. We've got about 1 million population. So we're much smaller. To give a little bit of context, And a lot of the big studios in Australia here are all on the East Coast, all out of Sydney, Melbourne, and some in Brisbane. And I got a shit ton of applicants, and I thought, far out, I had to self-teach myself this stuff. And that from that point was kind of like, I would love to be able to give other people the opportunity to be able to do what they love doing, which was 3D. Because I remember how I felt just wanting to do 3D and couldn't get a job doing it or being paid to do it. Obviously, if I knew everything I knew now, probably be a different game, but that's part of life and that's the journey, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's all part of a learning process. But to enable people to do what they love doing is the best thing you can do, right? And you can inspire others through all sorts of actions and, I guess, works, whether it's an image, a post on social, a video like this, doing what you're doing, a conference maybe.
Okay.
You know,
Keep saying those things.
keep going. So and I think that's a good place to start in when you're doing your work and trying to value your work, which can be tough sometimes because it is tough. And when we deal with clients, it can be hard.
Dude, listen, one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you, it's because I think you have done an incredible job in kind of like shifting your mindset. Like, I don't know if I'm, making too much of a guess right now, but I think that you had this change from going as an artist into being a full-time business guy. Maybe, I'm dreaming, but I'm following you on social media. I see the stuff that you post. I know more or less the stuff that you're interested in, the things that we kind of engage and share kind of an interest in. So I have this feeling that you have made a conscious decision to grow yourself into a different person that you were, say, 3 or 4 years ago when we first started to interact online. Do you want to talk a little bit about that aspect of your life? Am I wrong? Am I saying something completely?
I don't know, maybe yes or no. Nah, as we say down here in Australia. Look, I think I've always had an interest in personal growth and personal development. That was an interesting thing. I am on a podcast with 5 other good mates, which you should check out. It's a shameless plug at the Simple Minds podcast.
I'm gonna put a link in the video
which we talk about this stuff as well. And we were actually debating on the word self-growth or self-development or mindset on some negative connotations. But that aside, I've always been interested in it. I think it started when my mum or my parents had a book around, which was the good old classics, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, and How to Win Friends and Influence People. And they were the only 2 books I ever read in my kind of like teens, around when I was 17, 18. And I've always been quite an ambitious kind of individual as well. So it kind of started before maybe ArchViz anyway. And so I went down the engineering path. And I think that's the difference, was that I think it was always part of me, like anyway, this as well as the 3D. For whatever reason, I was drawn heavily to 3D. For example, I walked into, when I started as an engineering trainee draftsperson at the company, and I just remember walking past the CEO's office, and I'm like, I'm going to sit there, like that's where I'm going to be sitting. And so that was always my mindset and my attitude, from 18, 20. And so I think it wasn't up until probably the last 2 years or 3 years that I really started to take a big turn. And that was a key driver of hanging around and being in an environment and being around people that were wanting to do similar things and wanting to learn similar things. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've read more books than I've ever have, like in the prior 25 years of my life, because I'm not that old. And a big of that influence was, being around people who were like that. And it was a slow kind of progress as well, because I was growing the business. I was thrusted into a business. Luckily, I was grateful to be in a position for prior starting Blank Canvas to being exposed to business aspects, proposals, clients, because the company I joined prior was a bit of a startup engineering company. So I was kind of thrusted into managing a team pretty quickly and pretty young. So we grew from like 3 people to 12 in that company. And I had to kind of build out systems and look after people. And then before I knew it, I was kind of project managing, liaising with clients, preparing budgets and templates and things like that. And I think if I hadn't had that experience, I would have struggled a lot when I started Blank Canvas. Like simple things like a contract. I knew that I needed to prepare a proposal and get a signature before starting work on my first projects. I knew I needed to do that. It was a one-pager Word doc, pretty basic, but I'd always make sure I got the signature, right? And so I guess to some degree, I've always been exposed to that. And then the last couple of years, I've really delved into it harder. And that's been a lot of a resultant of hanging around like-minded people, but I had to put myself in that position.
Exactly.
So we actually were talking about this prior, where I joined kind of a business, I don't know whether you call it coaching or entourage. It was called the Entourage. It was a business coaching / workshop scenario where they just taught business. And it was 300 people would go fly over to Sydney for a weekend, and they would have these topics. You'd meet these people, really great energy, and you'd learn these things, and you come back buzzing, and you implement as much as you can, and then the buzz dies off. And that was my first kind of introductory to more business aspect. Then I met some people through that, which now we form we have like a breakfast club that we catch up every Thursday, which is just local business owners, even people who are not even business owners, but they're in this mindset and they want to change what they're doing. And just one of the key things, I think, there's questions in there of like, what was the hardest thing? If you can get, some mentorship or some coaching, or be around people who understand it, because when you run your own business, it's lonely as hell.
Yeah.
Because majority of people just do not understand. And I know that's kind of common and people say it, but you don't know it until you've been in it. And even now, even my team members still fully don't grasp what you have to deal with. And it's not until you've run a studio, and it's difference between having 2 or 3 people to having 10 or 20 people. It's a whole different psychological element. And I also believe that, which I believe is called the airplane theory, of that you can't help others if you can't help yourself. So you have to get your own shit sorted, and you have to have your own shit sorted before you can even be willing to offer anyone any advice or be willing to provide for anyone. If you're not capable, then you're not doing anyone any favors. And so as soon as I had taken on a couple staff members, I had to get serious about me first, and then that kind of really also jolted my, whether you call it self-development, personal growth journey. So, and I've continually battled over the years of artist business, which one should I go? And I think we touched on it in our first interview, that you really need to make a decision and keep questioning, what do you prefer and what do you enjoy more, the 3D component or the business component. And I still have the occasional tug of wars between it, even though I've made the decision to go business. So, that's kind of a little bit of...
These are all very good pointers, and I think that what you just said, that you should be able to, before helping others, to help yourself. I see it happening with a lot of people. A lot of the people that come to me seeking for advice, I see that, they are not ready to go into freelancing because they haven't reached that level of maturity where they say, I'm 100% self-sufficient, and I know when a client comes in that, how to take a project in my hands and how to point it into the right direction. And, they go into freelancing without that ability of like saying, I can help 100%, but I can help only 60% instead. And they ended up like, steering a horse that it's a crazy horse that they don't know how to bring back on the main road. You know what I mean? Now, before
Yeah.
we continue, there are a couple of questions that are already coming in. There is one from Juan Carlos that says, what was the hardest aspect of the business side of Archivist was difficult to manage in the first year of operation? So, yeah. Did you hear that?
Well, what was the hardest aspect for the business side? I think the uncertainty and the toll on you can just never appreciate. Like you'll never you underestimate it on the amount of effort that's required to go anywhere and the amount of work that you have to put in and the amount of sacrifice that you have to do. I think that is probably the hardest aspect. You just don't know what you have to sacrifice. Like people are like, oh yeah, you made it, or you're doing really good. And it's like, you have no idea. It's like turning down like birthday parties, not going to events. It's being a hermit in your home for, months at a time. It's 3 to 4 hours sleep for 3 or 4 months straight. It's dealing with painful clients, and then there's a bit of excitement and adrenaline all happening over the year as well. I think the difficult side is managing the personal life and just living. It just doesn't happen if you want to be serious about like having a studio, or even freelancing for the first year. Like that's probably the hardest aspect, because the finance side, you kind of work out in the first year. It doesn't really matter. You shouldn't expect to make any money in the first year anyway. If you're expecting to make money, then, you probably should have just stayed with your employer, or, maybe not give it a crack. So I think it's, just the sacrifice, the amount of effort that's required is just insane. I had a couple late nights the other week and it was nothing. And I'm like, how the hell did I do it at one period? Like, I have no idea. Like, I was lucky to get into a share office within the first 3 or 4 months. That'd be one hot tip if you're freelancing. Go out and if you're going to work from home, like looks like you've set up a really cool studio, either set up a workspace that's work, or go out and get a rented desk from a co-working space as quickly as you can, because that separation is super important. But I remember when I first got my desk, and what I did wrong was I would go to the office and I'd come home and still work until 2 a.m. in the morning, then sleep 3 hours, and then go to the office at 7 o'clock the next day.
Carry the computer at home with the screens.
Yeah,
I'm working from home.
And run off coffee and donuts for a while there. There's a couple of good photos. I'm quite round. It's pretty good. So look, that's probably one of the hardest. Thanks. So I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is just the amount of work that's involved, and psychologically as well, the toll that it has on you, because there's so much uncertainty as well. Where's my next project coming from? Where's my next client coming from? Then you get a few bits of work and it's like, can I do this work? Am I going to let them down? Is that going to hurt my brand? Are we going to deliver shit images? I can tell you now, don't worry about the quality of your images in your first year. Don't worry about it. I'm still surprised if there are any clients out there or anyone, whatever. I'm still surprised anyone paid money for our first renders. Like, don't worry about it.
Dude, I have another couple of questions. There is one from Mohammed. He says, what are the top 5 things to be clear about if you're starting an Archivist studio? But there is another question which comes from Ricardo Silva that says, "What's the reality for 3D companies in Australia compared to European companies or from the United States?"
I would be curious as into what aspect. What
Yeah,
is
actually, I was thinking about it, but I think probably
Ricardo could maybe elaborate if he's still there a little bit further on exactly what he means.
okay. I don't know because I
We can
think
come
that
back to
basically what is happening is that people are very interested in the business side of things and how to get work done. But I think that what I want to pick your brains a little bit more is try to explain people watching what is the mindset and what does it mean to grow as a person in terms to develop your own vision of who you want to be, kind of, rather than talking about the business side of running a company. We can go back to this later on, but for now I would like you to talk a little bit more about personal growth, because I know that you are doing it actively. You're not just doing it as you go along, you're actively working, you're going to conferences, you talk to people, you're exercising yourself to become a better, more successful person, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's probably some of the biggest things going from that first year, for argument's sake, if we were to lead on from there. Um, I learned pretty quickly things would have to change. They can't continue on that same path, so I had to start to make adjustments. And then once you start to hire people, it's a different level again. You're thrust into a position of leadership and as a boss, whether you like it or not. And I struggled for a long time. I never wanted to be perceived as the boss. I wanted to be one of the team and we worked together. But it's just the mentality, like that's just psychological. It's unfortunate, no matter what, they'll always look to me as the boss, right? And that's where I had to identify at some point, once I got about 2 or 3 employees, I had to understand what my role was that I am the leader of this ship. I am the captain of this ship, and it's my responsibility to everyone in the studio is my responsibility. And so therefore it's my responsibility to enable they perform the best. They have the tools, they're learning that they can be the best versions of themselves. And if I'm not living that either, how can I expect and demand that of them? And I think that's why I go also down this path. And that's something that I am still struggling with over the last 2 years. Who am I to expect these people that are on my team to do amazing and to be the best versions of them if I'm not going to expect that of myself? And so that's kind of the part of the reason why I keep going. And so, yeah, I've done a lot of things around, trying to learn more about my self-awareness, being in a better mind, being in a better state of mind every day. Because when you're running off 3 or 4 hours sleep, 5 coffees, you can be very agitated. You can be an asshole. You can say things you don't want to be. You're not quick. You're not quick to respond. You go into meetings and you look like a zombie. That's not a good first impression. There's how was your first client meeting? What should we prepare for? Don't look like a zombie.
Sleep.
So yeah, and so I had to start make the adjustments. And the other thing is I was working crazy hours. So I didn't want to, I had to make shifts. So I guess where I am now is I started reading a lot. So I read a lot of great books, and they're all self-development books. A couple great ones are The Alchemist is an amazing book if you're trying to understand yourself and understand that life is all about the journey. That's one of our kind of in our core group that we have, that we catch up. That's kind of like a religious Bible. Peaks and Valleys by MD Spencer, I think, is an amazing book, which is a short read. It'll take only 2 hours to read. If you're not a big reader, audiobook, podcasts, YouTube videos. If you can't be around people who are who give you value and are pushing you in a better direction, then find it yourself. And there's a shit ton of content out there on the internet that, a Tony Robbins can be your mentor.
Yeah.
Just because you don't pay for his course, you can watch all his content and he can be your mentor. So, Gary Vee, who I'm a massive fan of, who I got to meet last year, which was awesome. It's the first time I've kind of been giddy about someone. It was so surreal. It was amazing. But, his content is amazing because it just, even on the country thing, it doesn't matter where you are in the world. It doesn't matter who you work for or what you're doing, what industry. These are fundamentals that if you just apply them to yourself, you'll just be a better human and things will just be better for you. But, if you're struggling, if you're hanging around.
Repeat that, because there are some questions that are coming in which, in a way make me kind of feel that people are missing the point of this talk between you and I. If you're a better person, things will be better for you.
100%
this is golden.
Right. It's one of the biggest things that we talk about is that you have to take responsibility for yourself, and you have to start with you, which comes back to you can't help anyone if you can't help your stuff out. And that leads to, as well, I believe that personal life and work life are no longer these two separate things. They are one, and you have to work through that, because how your personal life is will affect your work life. If you've got, I don't know, all these women problems or boyfriend problems or all these issues, right? And it's draining all your time. And then you go into work the next day and you're like, that's going to influence your work, right? And the same goes for work. If work was a shit day and it's a shit environment and that client really pissed you off or that team member pissed you off, you take that home to your wife or your girlfriend and then you're like, and then it bounces. And there are obviously a lot of other examples around that as well. But you have to, this stuff around work-life balance it doesn't really exist anymore. You have to sort yourself out first.
Okay, listen, let's just go through all the questions.
Sure,
I invite you also to look, because they're piling up a little bit. Akshay, thanks a lot for stopping by. He was on his bike and he just stopped to say hi.
Thanks, nice. Akshay.
And okay, there are some questions. Okay, Ricardo is trying to explain what he meant. In Europe, there are many 3D companies, and in Australia, we do not have much knowledge about 3D companies. I wonder if he had been able to charge the same values per image if he was in another country. Okay, answer that. If you think you could have charged the same amount of money as in Australia as in any other country.
I think the short answer is no, you can't. I think the short answer is dependable on the market somewhat. But the other part of that as well is it doesn't really matter, because you can charge a lot here, you can charge a lot in, it's interesting. This whole charging in the dollars thing has obviously getting a lot of noise lately in the community. And I saw the viral post of Johanna's as well, which was really great. I hope he doesn't mind me referencing that. And there was some really great debate. And some people were willing to put their prices out there. And it was crazy to see the range of, 10,000 down to 200.
Yeah.
I think if you're really good at your craft, you can charge a premium for what you want. But then there are market limitations. It'd be naive to think that there aren't market limitations depending on where you are. But that comes back to, what do you want? Go where the markets are better as well. Like, if you're a young bloke, you've got nothing, you're at home with your mum, then go to London, go to New York, go to Australia. Like, just go. Like, that's part of that. You can blame the market. You can blame, I'm in the third world, but it's your responsibility to change that.
Yeah.
It's your responsibility to either get better or to, and I know it's a little bit harsh, and I apologize, because I am very lucky. I live here in Australia in Perth, and I was lucky to start out in a market that was quite healthy. I don't know how Australia's market on the 3D element is perceived by the rest of the world, but we have every development, no matter how small it is, up to the large towers, all get marketing images. It's just how it is here. So there's a lot of demand for what we do here. So it can be a little bit hard for me to say, but then that's where I strip it away and bring it back to the topics of what we're talking about, which is mindset, which is it's irrelevant. If you feel like your images are not good enough, practice more, learn more. If it comes back to what do you want, what are you willing to put in, and what do you need to adjust to fix that?
Yes.
And that's what it comes down to. And we touched on that before. If you're doing images and you want to charge more, depending on obviously your situation, you might have to stay up till 2 a.m. in the morning to learn more. Or you might have to reach out to other people in the community and go, I would love to have a chat with you about some stuff of how you did that amazing thing, because I'd love to know. So that could enhance your image. You might then get if you're a freelancer, you might get top studios going, hey, we want you to work for us. Like, why are you freelancing?
Yeah.
So in a long-winded answer, I think, it would be naive to say there are not market conditions, but at the other end of the spectrum, it's completely up to you.
I wanna add a little bit to what you just said. Currently, a couple of things that I'm looking into. I found a couple of good articles on Forbes, how the car industry adjusts to the world need for cars. Now, there are cars which are in production in different countries from the same brands, say, as in Europe, America, that, for instance, we don't have in Europe. Like, one of the examples was that Renault is actually developing a specific type of car which in Europe would be sold under the name of Dacia, whatever. But they're selling them all only in Latin and South America, because people wouldn't be able to buy the same type of Renault car that we have in Europe with the money that they make in those countries. So, BMW does the same, Audi does the same. And now that I live in the Middle East, I see cars from Audi that I've never seen in Europe, which are smaller, maybe a little bit more stripped down. And this is to supply to the fact that here they have a 100% surcharge in taxes. So a normal car that in Europe will cost 30,000, here in Israel costs 60,000, So it's funny to see how even the big companies have to adjust to the market. It's not something that you only have to do in archives, and I think this is normal.
Yeah, absolutely. And like as I said, you just have to be realistic around where you live and what you're doing. We are a global community, and if you're going to sit there and go, oh, like I'm in that comes back to that self-awareness piece again. If we want to bring it back to the mindset topic, you have to be self-aware enough that, like, you have to accept that, like, okay, I live here, this is the way that it is, and this is the maximum amount I'm ever going to have to charge. And if you don't like that, well, then move. And again, it's harsh, but and everyone's circumstances are different, right? And if that's the top limit in your country for ArchViz and you really love doing it, but it doesn't pay you whatever you want, well, you might have to find another industry to go join.
Yeah.
This is the other thing, is like, you have to understand what are your ambitions and what do you want, and they have to line up with whatever you're doing. If you want a cushiony 9-to-5 job, don't get into this space. Like, if you want to go to work, come home at 5, switch off, watch Netflix and chill, then don't get into this line of work.
It's very important what you're saying. Hold on, sorry, I'm going to interrupt you a little bit, just because right. I want people to understand that the type of call it internal speculation, mind speculation that you're doing is that you're acknowledging the fact that there could be the chance that, whatever it is that you want to do could work or not. But it is up to you to make the peace with yourself and to say, okay, if this is my reality, either I make the best out of it or I do something else. And then, 3D is my love and I do it on the weekends,
And that comes back to what I talk about. You have to take responsibility for yourself and whatever it is. And yeah, you have to map out what is it that you want and work it back to see if whatever you can do can map that. Like if you want to be a freelancer, like I still haven't watched, but I'd love to. I think Mike Golden.
Yeah.
Golden.
Yeah, Mike
like
Golden.
I saw some stuff on him and like insane, right? Seen some of, I haven't watched the video and I'd love to, from what I know, and please correct me if I'm wrong, freelancer in New York, charging a lot of money, doing great, right? Very selective clients, top of the game, top of the field. If that's what you want and you like the sound of that, then work out what it is that's required to get there. If you want a 9-to-5 job, don't do ArchViz. And like you said, do it on the weekend for fun and try to do what Victor did and get some work, into an art gallery and milk thousands of it over years, So it's relative.
He went
like
to
for
jail
myself,
to do that,
his story is amazing.
That's how bad he wanted it. So,
Yeah.
when people tell me, yeah, what am I supposed to do? You might want to go to jail.
Yeah. And we all put in a lot of work. Like it is tough in the 3D. So like everyone in this industry knows how to work and to put in hard work for the most part, the majority, I believe, because you wouldn't keep doing it if you didn't appreciate it like that, having to deal with Macs and rendering engines and crashes and, you got to have a lot of patience and be willing to do long hours. Otherwise you wouldn't make it far at all. So, it comes back to like for myself, I want to grow a studio. So I have to ensure that my actions and my learnings and what I'm doing are mapping to that. And I'm trying to be the best version of myself to enable my team members to be the best versions of them. I go out and learn and do this mindset stuff so I can then translate that to them and help them through their own journeys. And all their stories are different and what their needs and their desires are different as well. That's the other thing. We can all be an 3D artist, but all our wants and things are different. And they also change throughout your life, throughout your journey. Like right now, if you're a 22-year-old or 21-year-old, all you care about is money. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like there's nothing wrong with that. Like the younger you are, it's more about money. And then as you grow, it changes. You want a little bit more time. You want a little bit more freedom. You get exhausted. There's nothing wrong with, whatever it is that you want, and everyone's different. But willing to be put in the work of what's required for whatever that looks like. And again, comes back to, accepting responsibility for yourself.
Just one quick question. Do you see yourself more as an artist or as an entrepreneur right now?
Well, it's a great question. I don't know whether I'd class myself as I mean, by the definition of what an entrepreneur is, then yes, but I don't know whether I'd be willing to make that claim. I'm definitely more down the leadership and business side than artistry. When I question myself of like, where do I now spend the most of my time and what do I get excited about and what am I learning about? It's leadership, the business, growth, and those type of things. My day-to-day now only consists, I only do the odd artistry here and there. I don't do a lot of it now and haven't, for the last 12 months. So, yeah.
Now people are going to be like, oh, I really want to make 3D. Hold on, I'm going through all the questions. Okay, there are a couple of technical questions which I'm not sure if you're really interested in answering, like, what software do you think it's going to change the industry? There is still we haven't answered the question of Mohammed that he said, what are the top 5 things to be clear when starting an archivist studio? Maybe, I don't know, if you don't have 5, you probably have 2 that should be your priority. Maybe you can answer that. I try to go through all the questions, yeah, because
Yeah.
I
Well,
want to try not to miss anything.
I'll touch on maybe the software one quickly, because again, I can tie that back to that mindset. Just a tool. It's going to change. Be willing to adapt real quick. Like, simple as that. Things are changing. Learn quickly, and don't be romantic about V-Ray or Max or whatever. Just be willing to change. Change is coming. The way we this whole pricing of imagery, that's changing too. That's going to change in the next year. So this whole, how much do you charge per image, is changing. So you just have to learn to adapt. The top 5 things for an archivist, I don't know if I got 5, but this just applies to any business. Have a clear why, which is pretty much what I've been talking about. Understand what you want and why you want to do it. Like, why do you want to be a freelancer? Why do you want to start a studio? Understand a why, and have vision, mission, and values. So any company, whether you're 1 or 2 or 5 years old or whatever, should have a vision, mission, and values. You should have something that you stand for, you believe in, something you're trying to achieve, and the culture and the mind and the values that each team member or staff member and or even clients know you by. And you should have them, and they're really important to have. Otherwise, why are you different to that other company? What makes you different to them? And particularly if software is going to become easier, what makes D-Box different to Neoscape? I don't know. A lot of people will go this and this, but when you get to a certain level of quality of imagery on the top end studios, what makes you different? I think as well, understanding maybe if you're starting a business, understanding your personal position and who's involved. If you've got a partner, a wife, a girlfriend, understand what's involved, have conversations with them. Have a clear, which is your vision. Just understand where you're going and what you're doing. Otherwise, I don't know what it's like globally, but statistically in Australia, like only a crazy number of 1 in 20 businesses make it past year 3, and then another 1 in 100 make it past year 5 or something. Because I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but it's something ridiculous.
This is pretty much everywhere, and this is why governments give you 3 years tax breaks,
Yeah. So, but if you're clear on what you're doing, that'll pull you through the tough times, because it's really crap. There are a lot of lows. Be quick to understand finances. Know your numbers. I did say earlier, you don't have to worry about them as much, but know your numbers is very, very important. I mean, that's 4. I don't know if I have a 5th. Just be open-minded and just give it a go. If you do gonna commit, just give it a go. You're gonna mess up. You're gonna stuff up. You're gonna make mistakes. You're not gonna do the right things. But trust me, no one remembers the mistakes and no one remembers the fuck ups. Yeah. No one cares.
Yeah.
So it's just be willing to give it a go. And if you fail, doesn't matter. Who cares? Don't let your ego or your pride get in the way of when you get set back. So just be mentally prepared and just accept. And it's the amount of times I've stuffed up and haven't done the right things is crazy.
But it's just part crazy. of the journey, right?
Yeah, and it is a journey. It's not about the end point either. It's not about that destination. Because once you get there, trust me, it's just I got there. Yeah, so I set my first year goal, which was to hit $250,000 revenue and hire my first employee. And like that was my mini goal. And I was like, got there, and I was like, yeah, that was cool, because to me at the time that wasn't massive. And then I wanted to hit 1 mil revenue and then have a few more team members on offload some tasks. And I hit that goal. And I remember very vividly sitting on a park bench, and I had some assistants at the time. Again, I was doing some coaching, and I remember I just had this feeling of, now what? Like, it almost felt like I'd made it. I hadn't, obviously, clearly didn't. There's still a lot of problems, but it was like I hit the goal. And it was just, oh, well, yeah, now what?
Yeah.
Like, what now? So it's not about the end point. It is about the process and the journey. And so, you know, don't be too fixated. And if you don't achieve it as well, don't worry about it. You know, like if you don't, just go, well, what do we need to do to ensure that we get there, and get there in 6 months' time, you know? So
I have a
yeah.
question now for you because you mentioned it in the very beginning. And sorry, guys, Nazari, Carolina, I'm seeing all your questions. I'm gonna ask them. Justin, you don't have to run anywhere, right? We have.
I don't at the moment. It's 9 o'clock, so it's only eating into my bedtime.
Okay, so thank you so much for doing this, man.
No,
I'm gonna ask you these questions, but to me, it's a very important thing that you said at the beginning. You know, when you're starting a business, you should always keep three things in mind, which is, you know, knowing the why you're doing it, and this is actually one of the questions that I wanna ask you. How do you define what is your mission? Because, you know, this is very often we see things like Archivist. Archivist is a general service. Everybody wants to get into it because they think it's quick money, and sometimes it can be. But how do you understand how you can be different from others? You know, how do you develop in that direction? How do you kind of go and say, okay, I will tackle this aspect of the work that I do and make myself different from others?
Well, I think you've got to. So the first thing, and there's so many definitions. And I struggled in the early days of this, is the difference between vision, mission, and values. And like a lot of courses I've done talk a lot about this stuff as well. So it's nothing new. I think, and everyone defines it slightly different. I'm going to define it as my current understanding and the way that we apply it.
Mm-hmm.
A vision is your overarching kind of like guiding star. It's somewhat unattainable. It's kind of like the legacy. It's kind of like it's the thing that, you know, you could change, like whatever service you offer, you could change the service and still hit the vision, right?
Okay.
A mission, in my view, is something that is attainable. So, and it can change. Your vision doesn't really change. And you could have a vision, you could have multiple companies as well aiming for the same vision. But the mission is something that is achievable, right? So that could be, for argument's sake, you know, like on an ArchViz level. And you've got to be very wary of, like, we want to be the best ArchViz company in the world. Like, to whom? By what standard?
Exactly.
Like,
because this is a very open question.
Yeah, and it's very questionable. So you want to try and make your mission as definable as possible, that once it's achieved, it's like, we did it. And to be honest, it's something I've struggled with, particularly in the ArchViz field, because it's hard for us to pinpoint and define things. You know, we've even talked about, how do you know if your imagery is improving? Because you don't go from 5, there's no rating system from a 5 to 10.
Yeah.
It's like someone thinks your image is good and someone doesn't. So it's really hard to know sometimes. Yeah. But the mission should be achievable. So, for example, we tried to revisit ours lately, and I'll talk about our revisited one. We tried to break it down into, what do we actually do? What does our imagery do? A lot of people talk about story in ArchViz. I could talk on that as well, and that can be debatable too. Not every image has to have a story, but anyway, the overarching theme of, say, a building, if you're trying to visualize a building or a space, there is some story to it. And it can sometimes be just show the space, right? That can be the story of the imagery that you're trying to provide.
Yes.
Doesn't have to be a mood and a girl with an umbrella and it's raining and rah rah rah. It can just be we just want to show the space. So for argument's sake, we were trying to investigate a potential mission to be like, okay, so we deliver stories. Every project is a story. But rather than using projects, it's a pretty layman's term. So we're like, all right, by the year 2020, we want to deliver 250 stories in 10 countries throughout the world. And that could be a mission as a studio. So we want to be able to, in 10 different countries, produce imagery for buildings or archviz in different countries. And we want to do 250 of them. And so that can be a mission. It might not be an inspiring one. It's not something we've locked down, but it's an example of what we were brainstorming for
Yeah.
argument's sake, right? So to me, that's your mission. And then your values are who you're going to be as that team trying to execute on that mission. If you achieve that mission, it gets you closer to actualizing the vision. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think
So your values are,
it's beautiful
yeah,
also the way you
your values are who you are trying to achieve the mission. When you achieve the mission, you get closer to actualizing your vision.
uh,
So, that's where, you should start with the vision, then define your mission, and then your values. And your values can change too, by the way. They don't have to be set in stone.
this
So,
is
and
beautiful. It's making me thinking like you can actually, you see, that's the importance of planning, but real planning, like, like taking all the information that you have available and transform them in a way to kind of create an objective and work to achieve that objective. And we do
yeah,
this
because
in task breakdown, how you can take a task, and to get to point A to point Z, you don't necessarily need to have all the pieces in alphabetic order, but you can change them around if they get the work done uh,
yeah,
better,
because
faster.
you evolve and grow, and it's a journey, and companies evolve and grow all the time. And so you have to be willing to change and adapt. There's a quick question there. Yeah, values is essentially your culture. It's your culture as a team. Um, it's the culture that you want in the business, and the culture is super important in any business. Like, you can look to some businesses and they have an amazing success on the external front, and then you speak to some of the people in that company and they're
Yeah.
like, it's like there's always such bad things that are said about them. And so your culture is extremely important. And yeah, in my studio a while, probably 18 months ago, I'm happy to admit we had like what we call a cultural crisis. Because you grow and you put it to the wayside and it doesn't get addressed.
Yeah.
And so we had to really address, I guess, our culture. And we're still not perfect at it. Still, again, something we're trying to work on and improve. But yeah, for any business or for any studio, and if you're working for a studio and you don't know what the company's mission or values or mission is, you should go and find out, like, tomorrow or this week. And I would be like, if it was me knowing what I know now, I would be scared if the company didn't have any.
Yeah.
And that's weird to say, but
No, it makes total sense.
I would be scared if that company or that studio doesn't have any clear direction or idea of who they are, because I guarantee you they may have achieved success and they may have been around for a long time, but over the period of whatever, that'll start to come to the surface.
Yeah.
And everything works out in the end. You can get away with dodgy stuff for a while, but it all works out in the end. It all comes to the
I
surface.
have a couple of questions which are really, really good. I'll try to make it brief for you. So, um,
Sure.
do you think it's okay to cross the border and become friends, or better to be distant? This is like in relationship to the between leaders and employees, and I guess probably this also
Do you
goes
think
as
it's
a
okay? Oh, to become like
yeah,
between the boss and the staff,
yeah,
to be friends, or to be better distanced. Um, I My view, my belief is I can hang out and want to hang out with these people as my friends. And I wish they would approach me as my friends. The reality is some of them probably don't. Um, and that's fine. But, as a team, we do stuff in our free time. We hang out, we go to each other's events and things like that, or special occasions. I think if you're too distance, I believe it has negative consequences in the long run, particularly if you're the boss or the leader. You should make a big effort to close that gap. I touched on my first interview, which I've been a little bit slack the last couple of weeks, but I am going to get back onto it. I do one-on-ones with all my staff, like for half an hour to an hour, to better understand where they're at, what they're doing. Because as well, if you don't like working alongside these people or you aren't friends with them, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What's what are you doing? Because all we have in life as well is relationships
Yes.
with each other.
Yes.
So yeah, if you can't have that friendship or you can't be on that level, then you've got some serious questions you need to ask yourself. And if you're the boss, you either need to get rid of these people or you need to change yourself, which comes back to where we've been talking about. And remember that you don't have to change who, and this is an interesting thing about that responsibility. Let's say you've got a team and they're not performing or they're not operating the way that you want. Doesn't necessarily mean that you are at fault. It's your fault they're operating and behaving that way. Because you either A, are not communicating to them to the way of what you expect and what you want, you're not providing them the right advice, or you're not standing your ground, you don't have the courage, you prefer to be liked than to be a leader.
Yeah.
All of these things, if they're not performing or operating the way that you want, it's your fault.
Yeah.
As a manager, if you're looking after a group of people and they're not working the way that you want, it's your fault.
Yeah.
If you're running a studio, if you're the boss of any company, everything is your fault. If Joe or Bill, as it's true, is the junior of the studio and he misses the deadline, that's your fault.
Yeah.
So I think to answer the question, you can becoming friends is a great thing and it should be encouraged. What I love about the D2 conference is when everyone gets together of competing competitive studios and everyone's friends. Have
Thank
a beer and chill. I love it.
No, but I also think that there is a variable, which is, you might like how some people are as workers, but it doesn't mean that, you like them to spend time after work. It's
and you might not like be best buds and hang out all the time. There's with my team, like I wouldn't call them up to hang out and stuff, but we would organize things and do things together. So yeah, it's
it kind of makes me think of like comic scenes where the boss calls one of the employee, "Oh, I'm so lonely.
Do you want to hang out with me? Do you want to come for a beer?
I got a PlayStation."
So yeah,
I've got another question, which I think might be very interesting for the people watching. How is Blank Canvas different from anyone else?
Whoa, big question. To be perfectly honest with you, it's something we always challenge and question all the time, and I think that's what comes back to. We have a culture where we're always questioning and challenging how we can be better, how we can change. I think we are not that much different on a quality side of things. I think one of our biggest differences is our attitude and our approach to work rather than necessarily the end result per se at the moment. Like I wouldn't say our work's the best, but it's good, but could be better. But the way we approach is interesting. So there's a lot of studios in the world where I know there's a lot that don't as well, but in Australia, it's very common for one artist to work on one image from start to finish. They do their modeling or they get a model and then they take it from the model all the way to the final product. and they kind of own that image. And then so you might have a project of 10 or 15 images, and you might have 5 artists and they all do 3 images each or something. One of the big things that we do is we work more of an approach of, we collectively assign a team to a project, and they collectively work on the project. One person might do the texturing, person might do the furniture, and one person might do the lighting, and one person might do the landscaping, and kind of work on it across the board, no matter the scale or the size of the project. But even that's not that unique to a lot of studios either.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the big key difference is probably, I hope, which is what we've been working towards and what I've been building, I guess, a lot of my energy in, which is part of this mindset stuff, is hopefully our culture. And our culture will be what sets us apart from some of the other studios. Like, everyone has an opinion. Everyone gets to voice what they want. We have a very flexible work structure. We're trying to implement all of these elements that give people the autonomy that they can take ownership of their own work, and can be the best version of what they want to do. So yeah, I guess that's the dream. Whether that's the truth is work in progress. It's
Yeah.
all part of the process.
It's all part of the
There's a lot
process.
of things we do that we don't do and we'd like to do, but yeah, we slowly move through it.
I don't see any more questions coming in. There is only one more question, which is, what is your
Everyone's
advice
like,
for
enough talking.
what is your advice for a person who wants to create a good team?
Um, Understand who you are. So you got to start with self-awareness. Check your ego at the door. If you think you're better than other people, or you think that your answer's always right, or those type of attitudes, then you're going to set yourself up to fail. What's your expectations? Because they may never be met, and you have to learn to accept that. You have to accept that everyone's different. Everyone works different. Everyone approaches everything differently. Just because you think it should be done that way doesn't mean it will be done that way. In a roundabout way, what creates a good team is a team that has accountability, ownership, and responsibility. I mean, that to me is a definition of a good team. That they keep each other accountable, they challenge each other, they take ownership of their tasks, they don't pass blame, they don't say, oh, well, Karen didn't save it that way, so it's not my fault. That's bad team culture. It's, hey, Karen, you didn't save it correctly. I'm just going to fix this for you. Next time, make sure that we save it that particular way.
Yeah.
And then Karen responds with, no worries, thanks for letting me know. I'm really sorry about that. That was my fault.
Yes.
To me, that's good team culture, and that's what should be encouraged. And so what creates a good team is that. But you as the leader has to understand what your pitfalls are, and you have to understand who you are. Like, for example, I learnt early on that I was a control freak, and I had to slowly let go of
I
things.
love the way you're saying this.
um,
And my
came,
wife was right.
yeah, and because I
Did
demanded
she
a
hear that?
high standard. Oh, she will. She's
That
like,
is so
I
funny.
think when I shared the realization, she was like, yeah, I know. And I was like, oh, thanks for letting me know.
Sorry
um,
for
but
interrupting.
no, that's right. That's fine. But that ability goes, oh shit, all right. Then I need to ease off a little bit. I need to, check myself and things like that. So, and now to a point where I manage or make very little. Well, the last probably, it's only been to this year. Again, it's taken us 4 years to get to this level. I've gotten to a level where I don't really make many decisions. And I have to be comfortable with the decisions that are being made by the people that I've empowered to make those decisions.
Mm-hmm.
Because again, it comes back to, if they make the wrong decision, well, that was my fault
Yeah.
anyway,
Yeah.
because I haven't coached them or trained them appropriately. So yeah, I guess that's, I'm not sure what the question was, but yeah.
The question was, hold on, let me go back because I have it set. Uh, yeah, no, but I was following your train of thoughts, and I think that I can also how do you say, relate to that myself. You know, there are things that you have to accept, and you just have to be able to move on, you know. And I really like your approach that it is always your fault, because, you know, very often we say, and I see it also with my clients, you know, they say, oh, but, you know, my client told me that. I'm like, your client told you that because probably you brought your client to the point where he told you to do that, if that makes any sense. And it's just, I think, at the end of the day, it's that ability to understand that, you know, you should be in charge no matter what, all the time.
Yeah.
Um,
But the other interesting thing as well is, like, coming back to the good team, you should empower that anyone within the team can step up, and leadership can happen from the bottom down. That was a very interesting thing I learned recently, some from good friends of mine, who, one of them coaches a state basketball team and the other one plays in a state basketball team. And sport, I always reference sport a lot with my team as well, because sport is, some people might not like it, but it's a great reference point of good team and good leadership. And leadership can happen from the bottom down, like from the most junior person in the organization. It doesn't have to come from the top. But that's where, in creating a good culture that empowers individuals to have leadership in all levels of the organization. And that's part of the key. It's like, you know, having, like, you know, we'll have, for example, a junior telling off one of our seniors for, like, not turning his DR on. Like, you know, like, to something that's you know, the distribution render. Like, everyone knows you should just turn it on, but people forget, right?
yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it, and it's a bit of banter, but it's you know, from the bottom down, anyone, like, there's a very small minor thing, but it's an example of it. You need to work out how you can encourage it from the bottom as well from the top.
Mm. Justin,
So
listen, we are 1 hour and 17 minutes in. You know,
crazy.
we were supposed to talk only for 1 hour. I don't want to take too much of your bedtime, so that tomorrow with your clients you're gonna look like a zombie.
Nah, it's fine. I mean, yeah, I'll be fine. I mean, maybe we can answer one more and then I'll wrap it up.
Okay, then I think there is this question from Nazari, which we have already answered, because, you know, he asks, is it important to develop your personal style, or more as a business oriented is a secondary thing? Like, what I think what he's trying to asking is, so what is it more important, to have your own style or to develop as a business person
Oh, that one's a
more?
quick one. Your personal style should define your company or your studio. It's
And we're
simple.
not
That's
talking necessarily about business. I mean, you know, developing as a personally can, you know, go into the artistic side as well as the business thing. It's just that you cannot completely omit the business side of things when thinking to go and make a business.
Yeah, you can't be naive to that. I mean, I think if he's, yeah, I mean, if it's starting a business, your vision or your mission is going to be very personal to you, really.
Yeah,
And the reason people are going to join your organization is because they also believe in what you believe.
yeah,
At the end of the day, that's really all it is. You know, we have companies and we go to work for them because we believe in what they're trying to do, and, you know, and or they pay well, one or the other. You know, so if it's coming back to starting business, it should be your authentic self, who you are, and you should go for what you believe to be true. But yeah, you need to learn business. I think in terms of, like, mindsets or skill set. Um, Look, they're much interlinked. Like, again, it comes back to, if you develop your own personal skill set better, you don't have to know the business skill set. You can hire someone
Yeah.
to know the business element of it. You just need to know the bare basics.
Yeah.
Like, are we in the green or in the red?
Yeah.
But you can hire, are we getting enough sales or not? You can hire someone to do that. But I guess, to wrap up, if we want, a couple tips that have really helped me over the last couple of years on the personal level. Meditation has helped me a lot. That was something that I didn't really do, and I've been doing. I started out with an app called Calm, very simple app you can download, guided meditation. That was really amazing for me. Reading a lot more, so reading books. I do these weekly thoughts with my team every week around some of these things. Each week I send a company-wide email to everyone on some of this stuff. One of them's got kind of like my top 10 reads. I could share that with yourself, which I believe have helped me a lot over the last 2 years. Hanging out with people who challenge you and provide you value, or in this similar mind space. So if you're down the business aspect, hang out with other business owners. If you want to be a better artist, hang out with better artists.
Yeah.
Simple.
It's so simple.
Simple. Exercising and health, like, get serious about it at some point, like when you can. But it comes back to what you want. You might have to do crazy hours for a short period of time. It depends on your situation. So, but that's been a big factor for me. Like, I go to the gym in the morning, because if I go in the morning, then I set myself up to have a really good day. Energetically, I just feel a lot better. So I don't go for vanity purposes. I go for, when I go, I'm just in a much clearer mind, so I can execute and perform better.
Yeah.
Having a bit of organization. So doing a schedule. So being a little bit more structured with your week and your time will help you a lot as well. Well, that's helped me a lot. And understanding when you need breaks. So I found that I operate better on a kind of like a 2-month stint, meaning that I go hard for 2 months, then I need a 3 or 4 day like little break, like a little holiday or something, or a time away. And then I go for another like 2 months, and that works really well for me. That took a while to test. But there are a couple key things that over the last couple of years I've learned about myself that enable me to perform better and to grow, I guess, myself and learn. So, I don't know what you want to call them, but it's also influenced a lot my self-confidence, my self-belief, my self-worth, which are all issues we all battle with. My insecurities. I didn't start sharing on Instagram like until 12 months ago. I was just always, who am I to do this stuff? Even having this conversation, I don't think I would have done it 2 years ago, because of my insecurities around certain things. But all of these things have helped me a lot in building that up as well. So, it's all part of the journey and the process. So, and it takes time. Coaching and mentorship, super important. Like, being around, again, I can't stress that enough. And going to conferences or events or things that will enable you to meet those people or to learn, because you never know. It might be one sentence. Like, you might go to a 2-day conference, and it might be one sentence in that conference that changes your whole perspective on something, or changes the whole trajectory of where you are heading. And I genuinely believe that, like, if this is life, and you're born here and you die here, it only takes 1%. This is, say I'm 30, I'm here. It only takes a 1% degree to change the trajectory of your life.
Yeah.
So if you make a 1% adjustment here or there. And the other thing I should add in as well is that if you're trying to change habits, or whether they be personal, don't change too many at once. Only change one or two.
Take care of one.
Because you'll just fail. And a couple simple ones. I actually recommended this to one of my team members only last week, which he's going through a self-discovery process, and he's been conflicted. And I said to him, look, dude, before you make any of these changes, I said one thing, just do this one thing. I said, make the bed every day. He's like, what? I'm like, it's super simple. Just make your bed every day. He's like, oh, yeah, I've never done that. Like, why would I do that? And I said, if you just do that, that will just set you up to start to learn a habit. So now I make the bed every day, which the wife loves, because I never used to do it. I journal every day as well, which is really powerful for me. The meditation is whatever, but
Yeah.
that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
I've been doing a cold shower every morning since the start of the year, which has been fun. Um, so it might be a different.
You're really
Like,
living by the Tim Ferriss,
yeah,
Patterson.
but it's been a slow process, right? I
Yeah,
say
no, no,
all
no.
this stuff,
It's cool to see
but
that we basically
I
read the whole thing,
yeah,
the same things.
but I was exposed to that like 2 years ago. It's taken me like a year and a half, 2 years to
Yeah,
implement. It's just the way that it is.
yeah.
It just takes time. But I feel much better. I perform better than I ever have as well. So they're true. They work. The making the bed super powerful. Because the other thing is like when you've had a crazy stressful day, you do come home to a nice
Yeah, yeah.
and like the cold shower is nothing down here in Australia because it's always warm down here. So anyone's doing it over in Europe, kudos to you, because it's cold, but it's nothing. So, but again, I guess this episode was, I guess, really about that, and they've been some of the things that have really helped me become a much more, actually enjoy it much more because it's crazy.
It is weird that that the biggest problem, and we have this all the time. People ask questions which are very technical when it comes to the job, but they never really see the whole picture. One of the things that has helped me the most in my career as a freelancer was brush your teeth every day. And
Yep,
it's
yep,
it's
I can
it's
vouch for that
it's
one too.
it's crazy. But how many times as a freelancer you get up with your pajamas, you go like push the on button of your computer and start working from there,
You don't even push the on button. You check if your image rendered, and then you
Yeah,
go straight into post.
exactly. And you
And
don't
you,
have that break during the day where you say, I get myself in order, I wash myself, I'm wearing a nice new freshly washed t-shirt, my mouth is fresh, we have all these
I can,
receptors in our
I can
mouth.
smell your fresh mouth
Yeah.
from here. It's
We have
beautiful.
no, I had hummus, so I doubt it. But you get like you have all these receptors in your mouth. You have all these receptors around your neck, on your chest. Your body reacts to a fresh, clean environment. And it seems like a super silly thing to say, but this will jumpstart your day and make you 100% more productive, more pro doing stuff. Instead, if you're like, all
Yeah.
sleepy and you didn't wash yourself and, you're just working because your
I
client.
mean, and
Sorry,
there
go.
are some things that, no, you're right. Like, I guess where it's going, like, there are some things that you got to find out that work for you. You might find that journaling or meditating every day doesn't work for you. Like, you're like, oh, whatever, it
Yeah.
doesn't work for me. That's fine. But there are some fundamentals, like, I think, yeah, brushing your teeth, which just everyone should do. Um, but that's also, which you could go on as another topic for a later time. But, you know, don't off put things that in the moment seem like they don't have any consequences, but in the long run, they have very big
Yeah.
consequences. The last thing you want is a large dental bill in 5 years' time because you failed to.
Hey, I'm watching these videos from Fabio and I'm an archivist artist and I brush my teeth. Can I get a
I was told
job?
to brush your teeth. Yeah, exactly. I make my bed every day. Can I have a job at Blank Canvas? You're hired. Yeah. So look, they seem trivial, but they're very powerful. Very powerful.
Dude,
So
let's close
look,
it with this.
yeah, it's a good
We
hour and a half
we still have
for of it.
28 people watching. Go and brush your teeth right now. I'm gonna go after this talk. Justin, I just
Likewise.
wanna take the chance to thank you again for
No,
doing
thank
this.
you.
You know, I really hope to see you in Vienna.
Likewise.
Yeah, and it's I don't know, I think we're gonna have a beautiful 2018 in front of us, and it's going to be cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good. Thank you very much for having me. Yeah,
No,
went for an hour and a
absolutely,
half.
it's always a pleasure, and to me it's
I hope it could provide some value or some insight. Yeah, if anyone ever wants to reach out, then you can hit me up. Again, we talked about in the first interview. I'm very slow to respond though, but I do get back to you eventually.
yeah.
So you can reach me at my Instagram at justin.bourn. And then there's my blank canvas, the blank canvas Instagram, blankcanvas.studios, I believe,
Let's do
as well.
something. When the
Yeah.
recording is over and the video will go public, you can make a long comment, and I'll also copy it inside the
Of all
description.
the shameless plugs. Yeah, I'll
Yeah.
send that list through. But it's been yeah, it's been great. I hope some people got some something out of it. Have to admit I was a little nervous to begin with, but it's all good. Enjoyed my vino. It's all finished now. What a shame.
Justin, I'm gonna stop the streaming now. Don't go anywhere. I'm gonna say goodbye to you in person. Guys, thanks a lot
Sounds
for
good.
watching. If this is the first time that you're tuning in, hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't done it already, and I
You
will
should
see you.
subscribe
Yeah, you
wherever
should.
it is
And
over there.
is it in that corner? Yeah, on your
I think
corner?
it's on that corner.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks for listening to me, everyone, as well. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your time. Hopefully, I get to chat to you soon.
All right. See you guys soon.